Hi colleagues, my name is Cassie Henderson and this is my needs assessment presentation of an organization that provides substance abuse education within a township in Indianapolis at a local school district. So the purpose of this needs assessment, a big reason why this coalition was going to need to put together a needs assessment was for grant funding. So they have to maintain grant funding every year. So I was able to work with them as a coordinator to put together a needs assessment and review some of their past needs assessments from prior grants to see how things have changed. So they need to prove the problem statement, which is that youth abuse prescription drugs at DCHS, which is the local high school. The 4 problems that they were trying to prove is that youth get prescription drugs at parties, youth get prescription drugs from home, youth are using drugs at school, and youth are adjudicated through criminal court, which, as we know, causes issues later in life for how youth are criminalized when they're young, how they get out, how they're able to get out of the juvenile justice system. So there are a lot of different reasons why this is a problem. So the data collection process. I was very lucky to be able to work with this group because a lot of the data was given and was public. The data that wasn't public, I was able to work on a survey to distribute, and I had the means to distribute it throughout the entire school, which was incredible for this project. But some of the data that was public was the California Healthy Kids Survey, which is great if anyone needs youth data on a lot of different things, and it's a nationwide survey that's done. And then I had local police data, which is the IMPD data shown, and I had school expulsion data given to me by school administration, as well as some SRO, which are school resource officers, their data. So the youth survey that I was able to write and create, they let me distribute on iPads, which the school had, and 656 students completed this survey, and I was able to conduct an adult survey at one of their local coalition meetings. And that was sent out through Facebook and a few other links, and it was done through SurveyMonkey, and it was completed by 416 adults. And then I was able to share the results of the survey with the coalition. So not only did it help me put together this assessment for this class, it helped me distribute data to them that will now be used for their next grant proposal. So what I found out are the 2 main things are that social access to drugs, which is like in the home, through friends at school, and laws and enforcement both need to change. So the data showed that 40% of high school students report having tried some substance to get high, whether it was alcohol, prescription drugs, something one of their parents was prescribed to, just marijuana, they had reported using. And then 21.8% report current substance use, whether that's going home after school, smoking a bowl with their friends, whether it's abusing some of their prescription medication. That was just that they're reporting current substance use and abuse, not just use. And that's another thing that we need to correlate our language is like substance use is, I guess if you're drinking alcohol, you are using a substance. Abusing it is, drinking more than you should, drinking that impairs you. So that's something that is a language barrier, even with all of us, that we need to make sure we differentiate between. And that's something I learned working on this. So potential health disparity that showed up, which was interesting, was that female students were reporting a higher use rate than male. So this showed a vulnerable subpopulation within this community, that the female identifying students were using more than the male identifying students. I also want to say on plans of action to collaborate with everyone else, all these other organizations, because operations are influenced by all of their different partnerships, whether it's the police department, the local hospital. And because of that, these stakeholders have an investment in the success of this coalition. So for example, the law enforcement agency has provided match time for one of their resource officers. Therefore, we must provide him with documentation of the services that we're doing so his superiors can hold him accountable when he's putting time into the organization. So just how important it is to collaborate with different agencies. Okay, and finally, the reflection. So the success found here was that a lot of the reason this needs assessment was successful is that a lot of the data was given to me and was accessible. And then I also had a lot of success with the youth and adult survey because I was able to gather so many responses, which was extremely lucky for this project. There were also great teamwork and partnerships within this coalition. Some hindrances were community collaboration can be difficult getting people on board, especially at the beginning of the formation of a coalition, and being able to organize the volunteers. So a solution to that would be hiring a volunteer coordinator. So that way the grant coordinator, whoever's organizing all of this, that doesn't fall upon them, because that can just be a lot of extra work. And continued community education and successful coalition planning. Something that I learned is that most people within this organization and working on the needs assessment, they have an immense amount of collaboration involved to keep the coalition running the way that it is. So, for instance, there's a lot of red tape when it comes to government funding. So any new ideas have to be well considered by many. It can't just be one person deciding it. And it has to fit within the parameters of the initial goals and implementation tactics that were written into the grant proposal. So it takes a lot of creative energy to make sure that if you want to implement a new program, that it falls within line of what was originally written to gain funding for the grant. While some of the people in the coalition do have new ideas, they're unable to implement anything that requires funding without prior approval. So say Sally comes up and has this great idea to implement, an after-school drug education program. If it doesn't fall within what was already written for the funding, this organization won't be able to implement that, even if it's a great idea. So just kind of keeping in mind how that all works. And then I was also able to learn a lot about how a board works within a nonprofit setting. So the coalition itself is open to all, while it has a board of about 8 people that are appointed, and they have bylaws. I was able to review their bylaws as a part of this process, and it helped to make sense of how things operate within the group. So I just got to learn a lot about the leadership, how it runs, how the board influences the coalition, and vice versa. Thank you.